Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of The Blacklist. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I was actually shocked when we saw Aram at the beginning of this episode, because I was like, wait, really? I thought Aram wasn't going to be in this season at all. Because I remember reading an article that talked about that when I read about, when I was reviewing the season 9 finale, I looked it up and it was like, okay, the show's coming back for a 10th season, but the actor who plays Aram and the actress who played Agent Park aren't going to be back. But I'm wondering now, because it's the final season, I'm curious, are they going to come back, but not in main role capacity, maybe in smaller guest starring roles? Maybe. I'm curious to see about that. And because my biggest question too going forward was like, right, who's going to fill those voids to some extent? In this episode, at least on the tech side of things, they got Tadashi to fill that void after striking a deal with his mom. I love that. And she's just like, I don't want to put my son in this position, but it's also like, Mr. Reddington always paid in cash, so they had to strike up that deal. And then we get to meet, Agent Park's sort of replacement to some extent, which is that whole thing comes full circle a little bit, but we'll get to that later. But anyway, Aram seeing Reddington, he's like, oh, hey, calling out to him. And then Reddington looks over to him, like the beard, the hair's grown out. And I was like, that's where it's not saying anything. And all of a sudden a building explodes. Because apparently it's been like 6 months since this season 9 finale or so. Because it's like, yeah, everyone kind of went on to kind of do their things. They've all kind of stepped away from the task force because Reddington hasn't been, they're ready to jump back into it the moment Reddington came back, but he's been quiet since then. So Denbei's just kind of been still filing away all the stuff related to Marvin. Donald's continued to go to his meetings, and it seems like he's doing better, but I mean, obviously he's still got his struggles. Losing Liz has been hard, and he can't quite let go of the past. And I get it too, because it's like, I think by fully letting go of the past, it feels like letting go of Liz, so that's why he can't ever fully let it go and completely move forward, you know? I didn't even talk about it, but that's the second time that's happened to him. I didn't even think about that the entirety of like season 8 or 9. I mean, well, the entirety of season 9. This is the second time he lost someone, because like early on he lost wasn't it his ex-wife? That him and his ex-wife were rekindling things. I won't say it was like maybe season 1, season 2, she ended up dying. It was pretty early on in the series. But regardless, putting all that aside, but yeah, Aram ended up calling up Cooper, who called out Denbei. Denbei's like, well, I haven't heard anything about Reddington being back. It's like, well, what about Chuck? I was like, well, we called Chuck and nothing. And even later on when Denbei's like, yo, so why didn't you tell me Reddington's back? He's like, wait, Reddington's back? It's like, yeah, you didn't know about it? It's like, no, he hasn't said anything to me about it. It's like, so he hasn't even let one of his top security people know. He hasn't let anyone know that he's back in town. It's like, why is that? I was like, that's fascinating. Especially because Denbei picked up Wrestler. They went to go investigate the building that exploded. Turns out it's an annexed building, still falling under the banner of like a Chinese consulate. So a Chinese consulate member shows up to be like, yeah, you can't go in that building. We can't show you any security footage. We'll handle it. FBI doesn't need to get involved. But they go in the moment a body's found. Turns out it's Jennifer Moore's. I'm like, who is this person? I appreciate you, because because this show's been going on for so long that I never remember names of people. She was a part of a team that belonged to that Liz used back in season 8 when she was going after Reddington. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. I was like, I wonder where this is going. And then we find out she's connected to Wu Jing. And I was like, could she be? And especially later on when we find out that, oh, she was trying to steal something, because Tadashi was luckily able to get through some files on a computer, but obviously whatever she was looking into, Wu Jing didn't fully get everything, because it's like, right, it's kind of a setback that she's dead now, but it's like, right, we'll find another way. So it leads them to this art facility that facilitates like protecting art and stuff like that. And Wrestler and Denbei go there, and it turns out it's a CIA black site. Well, not even like a CIA black site. It's an international black site that multiple lettered agencies end up utilizing to kind of like, hold prisoners and interrogate them and stuff like that. The person they're interrogating, the Night Owl, which is code name for the freelancer, I was like, okay, now we're starting to piece certain things together. I was like, okay, so are you specifically going after people that worked with Liz, people that would have some connection to, these are people that Liz used to go up against Reddington in some shape or form. So I was like, could this be you trying to get those closest to Liz? Because it's about finding out the truth. Because yes, Marvin said all that he said about Reddington, but Woojin isn't, he's, I guess, a criminal with honor, where it's like, I'm not about to go after one of the biggest legends in like criminality without proof, because it's like, yeah, that's gonna, if I try gunning for the king, it's gonna be an issue if I don't got any like legit proof before, you know, I get locked and loaded and start the, because it means starting this war. So, but he's gathering allies because he doesn't know yet at the time. So I was like, that's interesting, because I mean, that's what the season 9 finale set up, that Woojin was like, yo, it's like, right, we're going to use the Blacklist. I mean, which this isn't the first time the Blacklist has been used against Reddington. Liz kind of used it to her advantage in season 8, and that, but Woojin's going to take it to a whole other level, where at least Liz backed down when the time came. I mean, there's too much history between her and Reddington, plus there's too much casualty and complications drawn up with the people around her, and especially like the team and everything. But ultimately, what really you know, but Woojin doesn't have that problem. It's like, oh, the moment I find out Reddington is who he claims to be, it isn't just about killing him. That's too simple. I want to destroy the reputation he's built for decades in the criminal world, because that way Reddington will have nowhere to go, because every criminal in the world will know who he is. Those he screwed over, those he's in business with, would be like, yo, he's a rat. He's also taking advantage of us. He's using us like this, giving himself an immunity deal. We're gonna burn him to the ground, because every criminal in the world will be gunning for him at that point in time. It's like, yo, because he also hasn't used, God, was that group? He ended up becoming the head of them in last season. Was it like the Skinners won that? Like, he hasn't fully utilized that group yet. Like, since getting like that like position, like he didn't use it too much last season. Maybe a lot of that was like off screen, but he didn't fully utilize that at all really much last season. So, but yeah, now it's like, okay, so obviously using this premiere to build upon the season 9 finale and kind of expanding upon Woojin's plan. Along with that, at that black site, they ended up running into an interesting person. They ran into Sia, who is Mira's daughter. I was like, dude, because I feel like I vaguely remember reading that somewhere. I don't know if that's something I read like recently, because I think I've skimmed an article or something. Or maybe it was something that was in an article I was skimming a little bit when I was checking to see if there was whether the show was coming back for a 10th season or not. I don't know, but we had the introduction of Mira's daughter. Like, I was like, wow. And that's what I was referencing earlier about the replacement for Agent Park kind of coming full circle in some regard. But it's also like, I mean, because it's interesting, because it's like, well, you know, Mira was there in season 1. Sadly, she died. And then Samar kind of filled that role for like the 5 seasons she was part of the show. Because didn't she leave in season 6? Maybe season, I don't think it was season 7. I think it was season 6. It might have been season 7. I don't remember. She was like on the show for 5 or 6 seasons. So there's that. Plus you have the whole situation now with, like, you know, Agent Park taking a step away, you know, obviously with everything that she was dealing with. So as like the moment they introduced Sia, I was like, oh, interesting. Like I said, I feel like I vaguely remember that being a story beat that I was reading somewhere, but maybe I'm misremembering. Which her being part of the show is a little suspicious to me, because of how later on she's so adamant about like, oh, Agent Cooper, let me be a part of this. I'm like, she's pushing too hard for this. I mean, it makes sense, and it's a job that will allow her to get closer to her own her mom, because it's like, right, my mom died. I don't know what circumstances she died under, what work she was working. So it's like, right, I want to be a part of something she was a part of, because that's why she's in this field in the first place, because she actually works for MI6, and she's going to be like in a liaison position, like Samar was. Like Samar was in the liaison angle of things, wasn't she? Because I feel like sometimes I'm confusing her story with like Ziva from from NCIS, because like Ziva was like a liaison from Mossad, and I'm pretty sure like, because that's what like Samar's situation ended up becoming, was kind of like, yeah, like ultimately Mossad was kind of coming after her, but I'm fairly certain it was that, like, yeah, she's a liaison as well, and kind of in that same Ziva conversation from NCIS. I mean, either way, God, I didn't even think about that even more so. I was like, oh yeah, there's an interesting parallel, isn't there? Where it's kind of like an NCIS and Blacklist comparison, just like that. Just because it was like, oh, Samar and Ziva like replacing a character that was like killed prior. So like, it's been so long. Was it Kate? I was trying to remember Sasha Alexander's character from NCIS. I want to say it was Kate. Yeah, it's just I've never in all these years put that correlation together. I was like, oh, very similar in that regard. I'm sure other shows have done a similar thing, but it's just I never thought about that. It's like a character that was only in the show for like maybe one or two, because I think Mira was only one season. Kate was 2 seasons before she died. Either way, once again, I'm going on a massive tangent, but my point was just like, she's pushing too hard. It made me suspicious of her. I'm like, oh, we're going to get some interesting reveal there. Like I said, it could just be like, no, I want to be closer to my mom. She's like, that's why I became an MI6 agent, because there were too many secrets around. So I wanted to put myself in a position where I could be put in the rooms with the right people to finally have those secrets revealed, like find out the real circumstances. Because she was 15 when her mom died, and all these years later, I mean, I was about to say it's been 10 years. It's like, no, it's actually been more. Bare minimum, it's been 12 years, because I keep forgetting there was a time skip in between season 8 and season 9. I actually keep forgetting that. There was like a 2-year period there. And like, it seems like it's been like 6 months since the season 9 finale. I don't think any other seasons there were like long periods in time between. I think season 8 to 9 was the only big time skip we've ever gotten. I mean, once again, it's still a fairly decent time skip of 2 years. But either way, but yeah, it turns out going back to it, the freelancer is who they're after. Well, who was Wu Jin after? And he's got people on the inside of the CIA. In particular, was it Devers, the guy that Sia was working with? Turns out he was like, yeah, I'm a cliche. I'm a spy that betrayed everything for money. He's like, to be fair, it's a lot of money. So he got away with the freelancer. Luckily, Sia's okay. Isn't that her mom died? Her mom was shot, right? I believe that's how Mira died. Obviously, I've not seen the first season of The Blacklist since it originally aired. So like, what, 2013, 2014? And that's also something I'm curious about too. I'm gonna have to look into this, but because when it was really originally announced that their show was going to come back for a 10th season, it was not known that this was going to be the final season, at least publicly. That information actually didn't drop until like early February, like at the beginning of February, being like, yeah, this is going to be the final season. That kind of took me by surprise. So that's why I'm curious, like how much of this season was the original plan all along, and how much of it is stuff they changed, or did they completely scrap the original script for this, or the original story? And I mean, we're continuing the Woojin aspect of it, so I'm sure like you're able to thread that in with kind of wrapping stuff up. So it might be more so they didn't have to completely scrap everything. I don't know whether the creators were kind of like in on that, where they were fine, like being like, all right, well, we got one more story in us. And then NBC kind of agreed, or was it just NBC came with that decision? They're like, actually, no, it's fine. We have a workaround. I'm curious, because that happens where it's like, yes, the public finds out about it well after the creators did. Typically, we know that's not always the case, but I'm assuming going into this that the creative team behind this had some heads up about like in between all of this, knowing like, hey, this next season is going to be the final season. But once again, that announcement being made publicly after the fact made me kind of go, that's kind of weird. That this upcoming season, then it's revealed that's going to be, usually it's like hey, this show's getting another season, but this next season's going to be the last. At least that way it feels like they have the entire prep time to be like, okay, we're going into our final season. That's where I'm wondering, did they get, because it's been a year since the announcement, because it was like when James Spader apparently announced it like around this time last year, hey, the show's coming back for a 10th season. So that's when I'm wondering, like, how much was changed, how much was capped, how much was completely scrapped, So that's why I'm almost wondering about the Sia stuff too. Like, was that always part of the plan, or did you just shift that because it's the final season? And once again, making it kind of come full circle in that regard. We're like, oh, Mira was originally part of the OG team. The team's going through some restructuring now to some extent with the absence of Aram and Park, and now we're bringing Sia into the fold. And then you also add in Reddington, who's trying to buy some place. He's like, oh, I want to find somewhere discreet. And I love he's having that back and forth with the kind of realtor lady. She's like, Reddington, like this place has, she's like, it's a really nice kitchen. He's like, oh, I love a good kitchen. But he's like, honestly, I could take you to a good place and have like, fix you really good meals. Like for me, what I need right now, this kitchen, I don't need a kitchen. She's like, there's nothing like that available. It doesn't exist. He's like, but it does exist. You're just telling me it doesn't exist because it's not available. And it's like, she's like, right. So you want to buy out who actually ever owns it? He's like, yeah, let me go take you for dinner. And then you can tell me everything about this particular, the particular people who own factories in this area. It's like Reddington is making some final moves. He's setting stuff up. And I'm curious, whatever it is, definitely Agnes plays a part in it. She has to. Like, she's the only ties to everything that Reddington still has to their past, their just bloodline, essentially. So it's like, yeah, Agnes is all that is left. So, and especially later on when Reddington shows up to be like, yeah, Wu Jin I tried to handle everything on my own, but the fact of the matter is I'm gonna need your help because this situation ended up going well beyond what even I can rein in at this point in time. So, well, that's all I came here to say. So I'll see you guys later. It's like, yeah, because part of the team's together. Not all of it, obviously. And he's about to leave, but Denbei's like, okay, what about Chuck? It's like, Chuck's, doing his own thing. And then Momo's like, oh, where's Weecha? Weecha's fine. Was like, you hesitate. You took too long to answer that. So now part of me is wondering, is like, is Reddington keeping everyone away? Because this is the end game. So I think Reddington's probably thinking like, I don't want the people near me catching strays because of it. So I was like, did you push Weecha and her sister away? Because at first I was like, wasn't Weecha in a really, really bad condition when we last saw her? But I was like, no, maybe not. Maybe, I think she was on the mend the last time we saw her. Obviously, it's been a while since the season 9 finale, but I want to say she was in a better position and stuff. I don't know. It's always the closest that end up kind of screwing you over the most. It's like, yeah, because the people who ended up being the deadliest to Reddington have been those, has been Kate, has been Liz, and now, and then Marvin, all ended up being like the biggest like side swipes that Reddington's ever had to deal with. So, and despite all that, despite the closeness of it all, Reddington has always come out on the top, but this one could be the one that ends up undoing him to the nth degree, I mean, to be fair, it's not even like this. It's not even like season 8 was the first time Liz came after Reddington. It's like season 5/6 was the first time there's the whole FBI agent thing in general, but obviously you had to kind of coincide that with working with him. But it's like, yeah, season 5 finale / season 6 is when she kind of first went after him. That took a step back. And then season 8 was about full on we're going after Reddington. So, but it definitely seems like something's up, because then Denbei's like, what are you planning? He's like, nothing's going on. Well, nothing and everything. I was like, that's not ominous. So I'm like, what have you got planned, Reddington? Like I said, it just feels like this is the end all be all, and it almost feels like you're going to pull off probably one of your biggest feats yet. And I feel like this might just be a situation where you won't survive it, and I think you're counting on that. I mean, we already know Reddington was sick, so maybe Reddington knows like, oh, I have even less time. Because like, once again, the fact is Aram saw you the way he did, like kind of like, once again, like the hair grown out. But the next time we see you in the episode, when you first pop up in the episode, and even later in the episode, you got the buzzed hair, like no beard and stuff. That's why I'm like, what's going on there? It's like, oh no, I'll take a cab. I'm fine on a security front. It's like, something's not right here. And like I said, I think you're pushing everyone away because I think this is your end in so many different regards. So I'm wondering, has his condition actually gotten worse, and so he's ready to kind of go off into that big sunset type of situation. But it's like, I'm not going down easy. I'm putting together the greatest plan ever. It's time to put this story that's been decades upon decades in the making. It's time to finally, it didn't end the way I wanted it to, like the way he wanted things to end between him and Liz last in season 8. But it's like, it's not the ending I foresaw, but it's going to be the ending I choose. So I could definitely see that being a thing. I'm legitimately curious if Reddington's going to survive this series or not, and there's a good chance he might not. So I'm really curious to see what happens. Once again, we're getting Sia, but once again on the Aram front, once again, is Aram going to make like smaller guest appearances? Will we get any of Agent Park and kind of updates about her circumstances? Or are we going to see a lot more Tadashi this season or something because he's going to be filling that void? Well, no, because they're like trying to get a tech person, but Tadashi kind of filled that void for now, so maybe we'll get a new quirky tech person. I'm sure whoever it is, you're just going to be reminded of, this person's fine, but they're not a Rom, because maybe they're going to be the exact opposite of a Rom. They're not going to be like kooky and quirky like he is. So you're just going to be like, it just makes you miss a Rom more. But I think we'll probably get the full team together, maybe even if it's just like in the series finale. So I think I could be mistaken. I think this is going to be like a full season. Like, I think this is going to be a full 22 episode season, which once again, I always find so fascinating because I'm like, most shows don't do that. Once again, your final season usually going to end up being your shortest season typically because that's just how it is. And that's why I feel like this season was probably done before NBC made the announcement. So that's why I'm like, either the ending can get reworked. It's already in the process of being reworked or already was reworked to fit a more series finale type of thing because they got heads up about it. I'm always so curious about the behind the scenes, like conversations between a show and like the creative team behind the show and the network when it comes to those decisions, you know? And, because it's like, yeah, NBC's the one that kind of get to make those decisions. You can have some agreement in that because, like, maybe the creators are like, I'm signing off on that. I'm fine with that. Or maybe it's kind of a mutual thing. It feels like it's probably more so a network thing. But either way, it's going to be so interesting to see what this final season's all about. I'm sure there's a trailer out there. I haven't seen it. I didn't want to see it. And I'm getting to this episode, like, a couple days later. It's Wednesday at the time we recorded this because I don't know if I'm putting this up today or whether this is going up tomorrow or not. But like I said, I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this, how this final season continues to play out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.